The room went quiet the instant someone called out my name and gestured toward the television screen. Every gaze shifted to me, including my father's. The expression on his face is something I will always remember. My name is Rebecca, I'm 29 years old, and that day, at my father David Langston's extravagant wedding, everything about his perception of me shifted. For years, he had introduced me with a grimace as just a security guard, as if my profession were a blemish on his meticulously crafted image. But in that moment, my job suddenly became the most significant aspect of my identity. As a senior investment banker at one of New York's top firms, he gauged success by financial wealth and social status. Our suburban home was pristine, our vacations lavish, and our family photographs perfectly arranged for his office desk. Yet, beneath that polished facade, our relationship was always strained by his unrealistic expectations. I was just 12 when my parents separated. My mother, Catherine, had finally reached her limit with his perpetual absence and emotional detachment. She was a kindergarten teacher who prioritized kindness over rivalry, and their values had diverged too greatly. The custody arrangement meant I spent weekdays with Mom in her humble apartment and weekends in Dad's sleek penthouse with a view of Central Park. Those weekend visits grew increasingly fraught as I matured and began making my own decisions. Dad had my life planned out, a prestigious university, law school, and then joining one of his friends' firms. When I revealed my intention to enlist in the military after high school, he reacted as if I had announced I was joining the circus. The military, he had mocked it during one of our strained dinners. Rebecca, people from our background do not enlist. They become officers if they must serve at all. I enlisted regardless. For years in the Army instilled in me discipline, leadership, and most importantly, revealed my passion for security and protection. After my honorable discharge, I utilized my GI Bill to pursue a degree in criminal justice while simultaneously working part-time as a campus security officer. From that point, I forged a career that filled me with pride, even if it never garnered my father's admiration. By the age of 29, I had ascended to a senior role at Solstice Protection Services, one of the nation's most esteemed private security firms. We managed everything from executive protection to event security for high-profile clients. My area of expertise was threat assessment, and I had recently overseen security for a diplomatic conference that brought our firm notable recognition in the industry. My supervisor even put my name forward for a Professional Achievement Award. Yet, none of this seemed to matter to my dad. In his eyes, success had a very limited definition. The fact that I donned a uniform rather than a power suit indicated to him that I had fallen short of his expectations. When I received his wedding invitation in the mail, I nearly discarded it. David Langston and Marcus Harrington request the honor of your presence. The cream-colored card with gold embossing practically shouted extravagance. Marcus was wife number 3, a socialite hailing from a banking family who mingled in the same elite circles as my father. They had crossed paths at a charity gala, and their engagement had been splashed across the society pages of the New York Times. You should attend, my friend Serena insisted when I shared the invitation with her over coffee. Perhaps this time will be different. Different how? I stirred my latte absent-mindedly. He will introduce me as his disappointing daughter who opted to be a security guard instead of pursuing a career in law. Then prove him wrong, Serena encouraged. Show up looking fabulous. Be courteous yet self-assured, and don't let him belittle you. Shopping for wedding attire with Serena turned into an all-day affair. We ultimately decided on a navy blue dress that was sophisticated without being ostentatious, complemented by understated silver jewelry. As I gazed into the mirror, a flicker of hope ignited within me. Maybe this time he would recognize me as the accomplished professional I had become. I was not the daughter who had let him down. The evening prior to the wedding, I reached out to my mom for some emotional support. Just remember, sweetheart, she advised, his failure to value your decisions reflects on him, not you. You have created a life that you can take pride in, and that is what truly counts. I clung to her words as I packed my overnight bag for the weekend at the luxurious resort where the wedding was set to occur. Deep inside, a tiny part of me still yearned for reconciliation, hoping for a sign that my father could recognize my worth beyond the career I had chosen. It was that flicker of hope that prompted me to pack the invitation book, the train ticket, and brace myself for the judgment that awaited. What I couldn't foresee at that moment was how profoundly this wedding weekend would alter everything between us. The Rosewood Resort sprawled over 30 acres of beautifully manicured gardens and immaculate beach. As my taxi drew near to the main building, I caught sight of white tents shimmering in the distance, where I presumed the ceremony would unfold. Even from a distance, I could see the intricate floral displays and crystal embellishments glistening in the midday sun. The lobby was alive with wedding guests checking in, many of whom I recognized from my father's social circle, women in chic sundresses with perfectly highlighted hair and men in tailored casual attire, chatting about stock options and real estate ventures. I felt immediately out of place, despite my carefully selected outfit. Rebecca, my father's companion, called out across the lobby. He approached with Ella Laner on his arm, both appearing as if they had stepped out of a high-end lifestyle magazine. "You made it," he said, his tone polite yet distant. A quick kiss on the cheek that barely connected. Marcus flashed a rehearsed smile that never reached her eyes. "So glad you could join us," she remarked, her attention already drifting to more significant guests arriving behind me. "The rehearsal dinner is at 6. Please make yourself comfortable until then." They quickly moved on, leaving me standing there alone with my overnight bag. A bellhop arrived to carry my luggage to my room, leaving me with several hours to spare before the evening's activities. The rehearsal dinner was held in a private dining area with a view of the ocean. The room was filled with round tables covered in white linen, each adorned with stunning centerpieces made of orchids and roses. Elegant calligraphy on place cards guided guests to their designated seats. Mine was at a side table, quite distant from the head table where my father and Marcus would be seated. I was halfway through a glass of wine when my father showed up with an older couple accompanying him. "This is my daughter Rebecca," he said casually. "She is a security guard, not a security professional, not a threat assessment specialist, not a senior operative with Solstice Protection Services, just a security guard." As if I spent my days checking IDs at a department store. "How interesting," the woman remarked, clearly struggling to find something nice to say. "Richard tells us you were in the military," her husband chimed in, trying to salvage the conversation. "Yes, Army," I replied. 4 years of active duty." "Well, thank you for your service," he said, and I could see them both mentally searching for a polite way to exit this discussion. My father provided the escape. "Let me introduce you to Marcus's brother. He just became a partner at Goldman Sachs." As they walked away, I caught the woman whispering, "A security guard." With Richard's connections, she could have been anything. This scenario played out repeatedly throughout the evening. Each introduction followed the same script. "My daughter Rebecca, she is a security guard." Occasionally, he would add, "She chose a different path," accompanied by a slight shrug that conveyed a wealth of disappointment. By the time dinner was served, I had been introduced to at least 15 people, each time reduced to my job title, stripped of all context and achievement. Each introduction eroded my determination to stay for the entire weekend. During the main course, I slipped away to the restroom and texted Serena. This was an error. He introduced me to everyone merely as a security guard. Her response came swiftly. "Remember the reasons you take pride in your work. His viewpoint does not diminish your worth." Upon returning to the dining room, I found myself next to the event photographer, possibly the only other person there in a service role like mine. "Tough crowd," he remarked softly, gesturing toward the table where my father was the center of attention. "You have no idea," I responded. "I overheard one of your introductions," he confessed. For what it's worth, security is far more crucial than what most of these individuals do. I would prefer someone who can ensure safety over another investment banker. His kindness almost brought tears to my eyes. I managed a smile and expressed my gratitude for his support. As the evening progressed, I withdrew further into myself, sipping water instead of wine to keep my mind clear. I considered leaving first thing in the morning, bypassing the wedding altogether. The idea was alluring, yet something held me back. Perhaps it was stubborn pride or a faint hope that tomorrow might somehow be different. What I didn't realize at that moment was just how different it would turn out to be, though not in any way I could have foreseen. The wedding day arrived bright and clear. The ceremony was set for 4 in the afternoon, followed by cocktails and a reception. I spent the morning steering clear of the wedding party, choosing instead to take a long walk on the beach and enjoy a quiet lunch on my room's balcony. By 3:30, guests were starting to assemble in the garden, where rows of white chairs faced an ornate floral arch. I quietly took a seat in the back row, exchanging polite nods with strangers who had no clue who I was. Better that way, I thought, than facing another embarrassing introduction. It was during the pre-ceremony hustle that I first sensed something was amiss. Working in security trains you to notice anomalies, things that don't quite fit the usual pattern. A member of the catering staff caught my eye, not due to any overt actions, but because of subtle discrepancies. His uniform was ill-fitting compared to the others, and he appeared to be unfamiliar with the usual service protocols. More significantly, his gaze continually swept over the crowd in a manner I recognized from my training, not as someone eager to assist guests, but as someone evaluating potential targets. Initially, I attempted to brush off my worries. It's just a professional hazard, I reassured myself. I tend to see threats everywhere. Yet, the uneasy feeling lingered as I observed him engage briefly with 2 other staff members, both exhibiting the same heightened awareness that seemed unusual for catering staff. I quietly edged closer, positioning myself near a service entrance where I could watch without drawing attention. The man I had first noticed vanished inside, and against my better judgment, I trailed him at a distance. The service corridor led to a kitchen area bustling with genuine catering staff. The man I was following slipped through swiftly and entered a storage room at the far end. I lingered, pretending to search for a restroom when a kitchen worker glanced in my direction. Moments later, the storage room door swung open, and I ducked behind a large cart of glassware. The suspicious man reappeared with the 2 others I had seen earlier. They conversed in low voices, but I managed to catch snippets of their discussion. Rich pickings, estimated at $2 million in jewelry alone after the vows during the champagne toast, for more coming through the east entrance. A chill ran down my spine. They were plotting a robbery, and from what I could gather, it was set to occur during the reception when guests would be preoccupied and valuables less secure. The timing was strategically sound. A room filled with affluent individuals adorned in their finest jewelry, all attention directed at the newlyweds. I silently retreated, careful to remain unnoticed. My first instinct was to alert the police, but I needed more information before taking action. If these were merely 3 individuals, venue security could manage the situation. If they had 4 more individuals arriving, this was a coordinated effort that necessitated immediate police action. Finding a secluded alcove, I made a call to the local authorities, keeping my voice down as I introduced myself as a security professional and expressed my concerns. The dispatcher assured me that officers would be dispatched to investigate discreetly, but it would take at least 20 minutes for them to reach the location. Next, I sought out the venue's security office, a small room hidden away near the management offices. Inside, I encountered a lone security guard monitoring the camera feeds. "I need to speak with your supervisor right away," I stated, presenting my Solstice Protection Services ID. "There is a credible security threat to the Williams-Harrington wedding." The guard, a man in his 50s named Carl according to his name tag, appeared doubtful but contacted his manager. Within moments, I was briefing the head of resort security, Michael Jenkins, on what I had witnessed. "We cannot disrupt the ceremony based solely on overheard conversations," he replied after considering my assessment. "However, I will assign additional security personnel around the perimeter and inform the staff to remain alert. I informed him that the police were en route but would not arrive for at least another 15 minutes. In the meantime, I recommend positioning your team at all exits and instructing them to be on the lookout for anyone matching the descriptions I provided. Jenkins nodded, clearly impressed by my professional demeanor. Are you armed? He asked quietly. No, I answered. I am just a guest at the wedding. The father of the bride has hired extra security for the gift table and jewelry, he remarked, checking his clipboard. We already have 2 armed guards stationed there. The threat I overheard indicated multiple assailants, I cautioned, possibly 7 in total, with 4 still to come. They specifically mentioned the east entrance. As Jenkins coordinated his team via radio, I made my way back to the ceremony, which was just starting. Guests were seated, soft music filled the air, and the wedding party commenced their procession. I took a seat at the very back. My focus was split between the ceremony and scanning the area for any suspicious behavior. My father stood at the altar, radiating happiness as Marcus approached him on her father's arm. In that moment, as pure joy illuminated his face, I felt a wave of sadness for our fractured relationship. However, I pushed that thought aside, concentrating instead on the potential threat. As the ceremony unfolded, I noticed 2 unfamiliar men in catering uniforms positioning themselves near the gift table. Their movements were deliberately casual, which immediately raised red flags. I texted Jenkins with their location and descriptions, then slowly made my way toward the back of the seating area to keep them in sight. The officiant was just declaring my father and Marcus as husband and wife when I spotted another suspicious figure near the bar set up for the reception. This one seemed to be concealing a weapon under his jacket. My grip tightened around my phone as I typed another alert to Jenkins. As guests applauded the newlyweds, I felt a growing sense of alarm that the police had not yet arrived, and the situation was escalating more quickly than I had anticipated. The robbery was not scheduled for later, as I had initially believed. They were positioning themselves now, ready to strike. As the ceremony shifted to the reception, I had mere seconds to decide my next course of action. Should I warn my father and create a scene that might provoke the armed suspects into violent behavior, or should I continue to monitor the situation while waiting for police backup? Years of training kicked in, and I opted for the approach least likely to endanger innocent guests. Moving with a casual yet purposeful demeanor toward the nearest suspect, I readied myself to act on what I had trained for over the years, even if it meant ruining my father's perfect wedding day. The transition from ceremony to reception occurred swiftly. Servers arrived with trays of champagne, and guests lined up to congratulate the couple. I kept my eyes on the 3 suspects I had spotted, feeling increasingly alarmed as I noticed they were now communicating through discreet earpieces. I checked my phone. There was still no message from the police. Jenkins had set up his security team as I recommended, but they were short-staffed and ill-equipped for what was about to unfold. My military training and security background warned me that this situation could escalate quickly. The first indication that the robbery was starting came when the lights flickered momentarily, a deliberate disruption of the venue's electrical system. In that instant of confusion, I noticed the suspect near the bar reaching into his jacket. Gun! I yelled, diving toward the nearest group of guests as the man brandished a weapon. Chaos erupted instantly. The armed man fired a shot into the air, triggering screams and panic as guests scrambled for cover. Nobody move, he ordered. This is a robbery. Comply, and no one gets hurt. 2 more men displayed weapons while others began to gather valuables from frightened guests. I caught sight of my father and Marcus huddled together, his arm protectively around her as one of the robbers approached, demanding jewelry. From my vantage point behind an overturned table, I evaluated the situation. 7 armed robbers, at least 30 guests in immediate peril, no police in sight, and venue security, outgunned and hesitant. An elderly woman nearby started to show signs of a panic attack, attracting the attention of one robber who approached with his weapon raised. Shut her up, he growled at the woman's companion. The elderly man looked terrified. She needs her medication, please. I said, shut her up. The robber raised his gun threateningly. In that split second, I made my choice. Rising from my position, I spoke to the gunman calmly. I am a medic, I lied. Let me assist her before she suffers a full cardiac event. You don't want a death on your conscience. That's the key distinction between robbery and murder charges. The robber hesitated for a moment, then abruptly aimed his gun at the elderly woman. Make it quick, he ordered. I moved deliberately, keeping my hands visible, kneeling beside the woman while positioning myself between her and the gunman. Up close, I noticed she was indeed in medical distress. Deep breaths, I instructed softly, all the while assessing the positions of all armed suspects in my peripheral vision. I'm going to help you and everyone else here. Just concentrate on your breathing. The woman's companion squeezed my hand in silent appreciation. As I feigned helping with breathing exercises, I caught sight of the police arriving outside through a window. The robbers were oblivious, too preoccupied with gathering valuables. The leader was now confronting my father, demanding his watch and Marcus's diamond necklace. Take it, my father replied, his voice trembling as he unclasped his PC Philippe. Marcus removed her necklace, tears streaming down her cheeks. The leader snatched the jewelry and then aimed his gun directly at my father's chest. The safe code for the bridal suite now, he commanded. My father stammered, I don't know it by heart. I need to check my phone. No phones, the robber snapped, pressing the gun barrel against my father's temple. Something inside me broke at the sight of my father so defenseless. Regardless of our differences, I couldn't bear to see him die. I locked eyes with the venue security chief across the room and gave him a discreet nod. He recognized my signal and prepared his team. There's a master list of codes at the front desk, I called out, diverting the leader's attention from my father. I work here. I can get it for you. The leader's suspicion grew. You work here doing what? Security, I replied, standing up slowly to my full height. I know the resort protocols. As I had hoped, the leader moved closer to me, enticed by the promise of easier access to the resort's secure areas. As he came within reach, I sprang into action. Years of combat training kicked in. In one smooth motion, I disarmed him, leveraging his own momentum to take control of his weapon while simultaneously delivering a precise strike to his solar plexus. He doubled over, gasping for breath as I secured his gun. His accomplice reacted instantly, firing in my direction. I felt a sharp pain in my upper arm, yet I held on to the leader, using him as a shield while I called out to the security team. At that moment, the venue's security team emerged from their positions, along with 2 undercover police officers who had successfully blended in with the crowd. Gunfire erupted briefly, but the robbers, witnessing their leader's capture and the police presence, began to surrender. One attempted to flee through the kitchen, taking a server hostage. I handed the subdued leader to a police officer and pursued him despite the bleeding wound in my arm. Moving quietly through the kitchen, I found them near the loading dock. It's over, I announced. The police have surrounded the building. The robber tightened his grip on the terrified server. Back off or I will shoot her. I kept my tone calm and authoritative. You are making this situation worse. Armed robbery escalates to attempted murder if you pull that trigger. Right now, with good behavior, you might see the light of day again someday. While maintaining eye contact and conversation, I gradually shifted my position to create a better angle for intervention. There is no escape, I continued. Put down the weapon and let her go. For a tense moment, I feared he would shoot. Then, perhaps sensing the resolve in my eyes, he lowered his gun slightly. That brief hesitation was all I needed. I lunged forward, deflecting his weapon arm while simultaneously freeing the hostage with a precise strike to his wrist. The gun clattered to the ground as I subdued him with a restraint hold I had mastered during my military service. Police officers rushed in moments later, securing the suspect and checking on my injury, which was bleeding profusely. "You need medical attention," one officer insisted. "First, check on the guests," I said, pressing a kitchen towel against my injury. "There's an elderly woman in the reception area who needs medical help." As I returned to the main hall, I found everything secure. The police had apprehended all suspects, and paramedics were tending to the guests. My father was with Marcus, both appearing stunned as they spoke with a detective. When my father noticed me, his expression turned to shock at the blood staining my dress sleeve. "Rebecca, you're hurt." "It's just a graze," I replied, though the pain was growing sharper as the adrenaline wore off. "Are you both all right?" Before he could respond, a paramedic stepped in, insisting on checking my wound. As I was guided to a treatment area, I overheard a guest say, "That's Richard's daughter. Did you see what she did?" The next hour flew by in a haze of police interviews and medical care. The bullet had merely grazed my arm, needing stitches but causing no serious harm. While the paramedic worked, police officers came to take my statement, expressing their astonishment at my actions. "If you hadn't identified the threat and acted when you did, it could have been a massacre," the police captain informed me. "These men are part of a crew that has targeted 3 other high-profile events this year. They typically don't leave witnesses." I downplayed my actions, insisting I had merely done what anyone with my training would have done. Eventually, the chaos calmed down. Guests were permitted to leave after providing their statements, though many stayed behind to discuss the dramatic events. My father approached as the paramedic completed bandaging my arm. "The police said you saved lives today," he remarked, his tone unusually subdued, possibly reflecting mine and Marcus's as well. I was at a loss for words. Years of being dismissed and disappointed couldn't be erased by a single moment of crisis, no matter how intense. "I was just doing my job, Dad," I said softly. "Even if it's just being a security guard." His face turned red as he realized his words were being thrown back at him. Marcus placed a hand on his arm, possibly sensing the rising tension. "We are truly thankful, Rebecca," she said. "The police would like to speak with you again tomorrow regarding the investigation. Will you be joining us for brunch?" Feeling exhausted and emotionally spent, I simply agreed to conclude the conversation. All I desired was to shower, change out of my blood-stained dress, and get some sleep. The reception was clearly cancelled, with the venue now a crime scene being examined by forensic teams. As I exited, a local news crew was setting up outside, interviewing shaken guests about the attempted robbery. I managed to slip past them unnoticed and returned to my room alone. The next morning, I woke up to my phone buzzing with notifications. My arm ached as I reached for it, memories of the previous day rushing back as I scrolled through the messages. Serena had texted me multiple times after seeing early news reports about the incident. My boss at Solstice had called twice, leaving messages to check on my well-being and expressing how proud the company was. There were even messages from former military colleagues who had somehow learned about what transpired. The most unexpected notification was a voicemail from my mother, "Honey, I just saw what happened on the morning news. Please call me as soon as you can. I am so proud of you, but I'm also very worried." I had managed to avoid the reporters yesterday, but it seemed the story had still made headlines. I turned on the television in my hotel room and found a local channel already airing the story. Breaking news. Attempted armed robbery at a luxury resort wedding thwarted by a security expert. 7 suspects in custody following a dramatic intervention by wedding guest identified as security professional Rebecca Williams. I watched in disbelief as shaky cell phone footage displayed parts of the incident, followed by interviews with grateful guests who described my actions in increasingly heroic terms. "She moved like a character from an action movie," one guest exclaimed. "She rescued that elderly couple and then confronted the leader just as he was menacing the bride's father." Another scene depicted the police captain during a press conference. The swift and brave actions of Miss Williams averted what could have been a disastrous situation. These suspects are linked to a crime syndicate responsible for numerous armed robberies aimed at high-profile events. Thanks to Miss Williams, they are now apprehended and facing a multitude of felony charges. I switched off the television, feeling oddly disconnected from the individual they were portraying. In reality, I had merely relied on my training and done what was necessary. The alternative of standing idly by while armed criminals threatened innocent lives, including my father's, was never an option. The bandage on my arm required a change, and the hotel room suddenly felt stifling. Despite my hesitation to confront my father and his guests, I resolved to attend the brunch, if only to provide my statement to the detectives and then depart. After a careful shower that kept my bandaged arm dry, I put on the only other outfit I had packed, a simple black pantsuit I had brought in case the rehearsal dinner turned out to be more formal than anticipated. It would have to suffice, although the jacket fit awkwardly over my bandaged arm. The brunch was being held in a different room than originally planned, a smaller space that felt somber compared to yesterday's elaborate setup. Upon my arrival, the event was already in progress, with subdued guests picking at breakfast buffet offerings while discussing the previous day's drama in hushed tones. Marcus noticed me first, breaking away from a conversation to approach. "Rebecca, thank you for coming," she said, her usual polished demeanor revealing cracks of genuine emotion. "How is your arm?" "It will heal," I replied simply. "I understand the detectives wanted to speak with me again." "Yes, they should be here soon," she hesitated, then added, "Richard has been trying to convey to everyone how proud he is of you. It's just that everything has been such a shock." I nodded, unable to trust myself to reply. After years of being overlooked, my father's sudden pride felt insincere, more a reaction to public recognition than a true appreciation of who I am. As I headed towards the buffet, grabbing a cup of coffee, I found I had no desire for actual food. I noticed the stares and the whispers that trailed behind me. Guests who had barely acknowledged my presence the day before were now watching me with renewed interest. My father was holding court at a table by the window, surrounded by his closest friends. He appeared to be in the middle of a story, gesturing animatedly. As I got closer, I caught the last part of his words. "Always knew she had potential. That military training really paid off, didn't it?" I halted, coffee cup halfway to my lips. Was he genuinely trying to take credit for my achievements? Suggesting he had supported my military service when he had actively opposed it? Before I could decide whether to confront him, a staff member came over to inform me that the detectives had arrived and were waiting to speak with me in a private room. Relieved by the interruption, I followed her out. The interview with the detectives was straightforward. They needed more details for their investigation and wanted to confirm certain elements of the timeline. They told me that all 7 suspects were in custody and that evidence found in their vehicle had linked them to 3 previous armed robberies at upscale events. "You will likely be called to testify when this goes to trial," the lead detective explained. "And there's already talk of a civilian commendation from the department." I thanked them but downplayed the idea of any award. I was merely doing what I was trained to do. "Well, not everyone with training acts when the moment arises," the detective replied. "From what we have gathered, you saved lives yesterday." When I returned to the brunch, I planned to make a quick exit. I had shared my statement, made my entrance, and felt no need to extend what was already an awkward situation. My father, on the other hand, had different plans. "There she is," he exclaimed as I walked in, drawing everyone's attention towards me. The star of the moment. I managed a polite smile, feeling uneasy under the spotlight. My father came closer, wrapping an arm around my shoulders in a display of affection that felt strange after years of separation. "I was just telling everyone how you've always had this protective nature," he announced loudly enough for the nearby tables to overhear. "Remember when she was 10 and stood up to that bully at school? Always looking out for others, my Rebecca." The selective memory and altered history were overwhelming. I gently pulled away from his embrace. Dad, I really need to leave. I have a train to catch. Nonsense. You can't leave yet. People want to hear about your security work now. The way he mentioned my security work felt different this time. Not dismissive, but almost proud, as if my career had suddenly gained value because it reflected positively on him. I was spared from having to reply when a stir erupted near the bar area. Someone had increased the volume on the television mounted on the wall, which was broadcasting a breaking news segment. We have more details on yesterday's dramatic thwarting of an armed robbery at the Rosewood Resort, the news anchor announced. The security expert who intervened has been identified as Rebecca Williams, a decorated military veteran currently working with Solstice Protection Services. The screen shifted to display a professional headshot of me from Solstice's website, followed by security camera footage of the incident that someone had clearly shared with the media. There I was, moving with determined purpose as I disarmed the lead robber and coordinated with security personnel. A silence enveloped the brunch as everyone turned to watch. The news segment progressed with interviews featuring law enforcement and security specialists commending my actions and my professional evaluation of the threat. Then, unexpectedly, footage emerged of me chasing the last suspect through the kitchen and resolving the hostage crisis, all captured by the venue's security cameras. I had no idea that part of the incident had been recorded. As the video played, someone across the room shouted loud enough for everyone to hear, "Holy, she is on the news." Instantly, all eyes shifted from the television to me, frozen near the doorway. I observed my father's reaction as he gazed at the screen, his champagne glass slipping from his grasp and shattering on the floor. The sound resonated in the sudden stillness of the room. The news anchor continued, stating that according to police, this criminal organization had been targeting high-profile events for months. Sources close to the investigation revealed that the jewelry and valuables they had already taken from guests at yesterday's event were worth over $300,000 before Williams stepped in. As the segment concluded, the room burst into conversation, with guests pointing between me and the television in astonishment. My father remained fixed in place, champagne pooling around his expensive shoes, his face a complex blend of shock, embarrassment, and perhaps the first signs of genuine respect. In that moment, everything shifted. Not because I sought or needed his approval, but because for the first time, he was seeing me for who I truly was, the professional, capable, and valuable on my own terms, not his. The shattered champagne glass seemed to fracture the atmosphere in the room as well. The polite society facade cracked open, and suddenly everyone was eager to talk to me. Guests who had barely acknowledged me the day before now approached with effusive praise and inquiries about my work. "Is it true you were decorated in the military?" One of my father's business associates inquired. "You work for Solstice. They managed security for the governor's inaugural ball, didn't they?" Another person asked. "The news reported that you identified the threat before anything occurred. How did you know?" A woman adorned in expensive pearls probed further. I responded politely but briefly, feeling increasingly uneasy with the attention. This was not how I envisioned my weekend unfolding. I had braced myself for dismissal and disappointment, not for being the focal point of interest. My father remained in his position by the shattered glass, although someone had arrived to tidy up the mess. Marcus stood next to him, whispering something into his ear while he continued to gaze in my direction. "If you will excuse me," I addressed the group that had formed around me, "I need to have a word with my father." As I approached him, I witnessed something I had seldom seen in my life, David Langston at a loss for words. He opened his mouth, then shut it again, unusually hesitant. "Dad," I said simply. "Rebecca," he responded, his voice unexpectedly rough. "I didn't realize the news report mentioned you were nominated for a Civilian Bravery Award, apparently." "So," I confirmed, although that was never my intention. "And you work for Solstice, the leading firm in the industry?" "Yes, for 3 years now. I brought it up at Christmas dinner last year, but you were engrossed in a discussion about the stock market with Uncle Robert." He had the decency to look embarrassed. I see, Marcus interjected, squeezing my father's arm. Richard, perhaps you and Rebecca should have a private conversation. He nodded, gesturing toward a small alcove away from the main brunch area. As we walked, I noticed the room had split its focus between us and the television, which was now airing follow-up coverage about the thwarted robbery. The news claims you saved lives, my father remarked. Once we were relatively alone, including Marcus, I stated, I did what needed to be done, I replied calmly. I have been, he hesitated, searching for words, too uninformed about your career. Uninformed, I couldn't help but notice the tension in my voice. Dad, you've been quite dismissive. You introduced me to everyone at this wedding merely as a security guard. He flinched. I realized I didn't grasp the essence of your work. You never inquired, I pointed out. Not once in 7 years have you shown any curiosity about what I truly do. You deemed my career unworthy, and that was the end of it. He appeared genuinely taken aback. I assumed you were just doing minimum wage security jobs, like mall security or bouncer work, which made it acceptable for you to disregard me, to belittle me in front of your friends. The question lingered between us, with the television visible over his shoulder. They were now displaying my professional biography, Army veteran, criminal justice degree, specialized training in threat assessment, and a leadership role in VIP protection at one of the top security firms in the nation. My father's gaze followed mine to the screen. You protect important people, he said slowly, as if coming to a realization for the first time. Yes, among other responsibilities. Important people like me, he added. The irony was not lost on either of us. Yes, Dad. People exactly like you. The weight of that statement hung heavily between us. For years, he had belittled my career as trivial. Yet, it was that very career that had shielded him and those he cared about from a potentially life-threatening situation. Before he could reply, a resort staff member approached us. Miss Williams, some media representatives are requesting to speak with you. The manager asked me to see if you're willing to make a statement. I shook my head. Please inform them that I'm not interested in interviews at this moment. After the staff member departed, my father regarded me with newfound intrigue. You don't want the publicity. It could benefit your career. My career is thriving without it, I responded. I didn't step in yesterday for recognition. Then why did you? He asked, and I was taken aback by the genuine interest in his voice. Because it was the right thing to do. Because people were in danger. Because it is what I am trained for. I paused, then added more quietly, and because despite everything, I would never stand by and watch you get hurt. Something shifted in his expression, then a softening around the eyes that I had rarely seen directed at me. Rebecca, I owe you an apology, not just for yesterday, but for years of misunderstanding. It was a start, though. Misunderstanding hardly covered the years of dismissal and disappointment. Before I could respond, the television volume suddenly increased again as someone turned it up to hear the latest update. We are now learning more about Rebecca Williams, the security expert who prevented what could have been a tragic outcome at yesterday's resort wedding, the anchor was saying. According to Solstice Protection Services, Williams recently led security for the International Finance Summit, protecting over 30 high-level executives and government officials. She has received multiple commendations for her work in threat assessment and is considered one of the rising stars in the private security industry. The camera cut to my boss, Gabriel Chen, standing outside Solstice's headquarters. Rebecca exemplifies the highest standards of our profession. He was saying her actions yesterday demonstrate the level of training and commitment our team brings to every assignment. We are incredibly proud of her quick thinking and courage under pressure. The brunch room had fallen silent again, all eyes moving between the television and me. I felt my face flush with embarrassment at being the center of attention, but also with a strange sense of vindication. For years I had carried the weight of my father's disappointment, questioning my own choices despite my professional success. Now suddenly my world was being broadcast for all to see, including the father who had never bothered to look. As the news segment ended, a slow, scattered applause began building until the entire room was clapping. My father hesitated for a moment, his gaze fixed on my face. Eventually, the applause faded, and the guests resumed their conversations, which now seemed to revolve around me. I turned back to my father, who was observing me with an unreadable expression. "I think I should leave," I said. "This is meant to be your and Marcus's celebration, not whatever this has turned into." "Wait," he replied, reaching out to touch my arm but stopping when he noticed my bandage. "You were shot protecting us." "It's just a graze." "That's not the issue," I countered. He shook his head. "You risked yourself for a room full of people who didn't even know your name, including me." He trailed off, unable to articulate the thought. The unspoken truth lingered between us, especially from him, who had never appreciated my efforts until they saved his life. "Dad, we don't need to have this conversation right now," I said, feeling overwhelmed by the emotional burden. "You should return to your guests. We can discuss this later." "No," he insisted. "We've delayed this conversation for far too long. I have avoided it." He glanced around the bustling room. "But you're right. This isn't the right setting. Will you meet me this afternoon before you leave? Just the two of us." I hesitated for a moment before nodding. "Text me the time and place." As I turned to leave, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. It was Gabriel, my boss at Solstice. I stepped outside to take the call. "Rebecca, are you all right?" he asked immediately. "I just saw the full news report." "I'm fine," I reassured him. "It's a minor injury, nothing serious. The company wants to issue a formal statement regarding your actions." The phone has been ringing non-stop with media inquiries and, more importantly, new client interest. "What you did is exactly what we train for, but rarely get to showcase so publicly." I sighed. "I understand, but I'd prefer not to become the face of the company because of this." "I respect that," Gabriel replied. "But there's something else. The CEO wants to meet with you when you return. Between us, I believe a promotion is on the horizon for you. Your actions truly embodied everything that Solstice represents." After our call ended, I found myself standing in the hallway, processing all that had transpired. In just 24 hours, my entire relationship with my father had been turned upside down. I had become a minor news headline, and it seemed my career was about to take a significant leap forward. It was overwhelming, but as I had learned during my time in the military and in my security career, the most crucial moments often arrive when we least anticipate them. The pressing question now was how to navigate this situation. My father sent me a text asking to meet at a quiet bar located on the resort's top floor, away from the remaining wedding guests. Upon my arrival, he was already seated alone at a corner table with a view of the ocean. 2 untouched drinks were waiting on the table. "Club soda with lime," he said, gesturing to one of the glasses as I approached. "I remembered you don't drink while on duty, and considering everything that happened." "Thank you," I replied, taken aback by his thoughtfulness. It was a small gesture, yet it held significant weight coming from a man who had seldom acknowledged my preferences. We sat in an uncomfortable silence for a moment before he finally spoke. "I watched more of the news coverage after you left. They interviewed a security expert who detailed exactly what you did, how you identified the threat pattern, how you strategically positioned yourself, and how you applied minimal force for maximum effect." He shook his head in disbelief. It felt like I was hearing about a stranger, yet it was my daughter. "That's the issue, Dad," I said softly. "I've never been a stranger. I've always been right here. You just never noticed." He recoiled as if I had struck him. "I deserved that," he admitted. "But this isn't about what you deserve," I countered. "It's about acknowledgement. Basic human acknowledgement of who I am and what is important to me." He nodded slowly. "I always believed I knew what was best for you, the path that would provide you with the most opportunities and security. But financial security isn't the only form of security. I emphasized that following someone else's dream is never as satisfying as chasing your own. I realize that now. He inhaled deeply. Yesterday, when that man had a gun pointed at me, do you know what crossed my mind? Not the company, not the investment portfolio, not the vacation properties. I thought of you and your mother and how I had squandered so much time on things that suddenly seemed insignificant. I stayed quiet, allowing him to continue. And then there you were, stepping up and taking charge of a situation that had professional security guards retreating. You were incredible, Rebecca. Not because you were featured on the news or because people are calling you a hero, but because you are entirely yourself, self-assured, capable, and composed under pressure. He glanced down at his untouched drink. I have never felt prouder in my life, and I have never felt more ashamed of how little I have comprehended or supported you. The words I had yearned to hear for years now carried unexpected weight. Part of me wanted to embrace this sudden acknowledgement and move on, but another part recognized the necessity for complete honesty if we were to ever mend our relationship. Dad, I appreciate that. I truly do. But I need you to grasp something. I did not become who I am in an instant. I did not suddenly evolve into someone deserving of your respect because I was on the news or because I thwarted a robbery at your wedding. I have always been this person, dedicated, skilled, and committed to something I believe in. The only thing that shifted was your viewpoint. He nodded, acknowledging the truth in my words. You are correct, and I cannot undo the years of neglect or the harm it caused. I can only express that my eyes are open now, and I would like the opportunity to genuinely know my daughter, the real one, not the version I envisioned you should be. That would be a beginning, I acknowledged. Your mother always said you understood your own mind better than anyone, he confessed with a slight smile. Years ago, she told me that resisting your true self would only push you away. She was correct about that, just as she was about many other things. The thought of my mother sparked a question. Have you talked to Mom since yesterday? Yes, just briefly. She called after catching the news. His expression softened. She forcefully reminded me that she has been attending your professional award ceremonies for years without my presence. I couldn't help but smile, picturing my mother's assertive reminder. There's one more thing I need to mention, my father resumed, his tone turning serious again. Thank you, not only for what you did yesterday but for being who you are, even in the face of my lack of support. That requires a kind of strength I am just beginning to recognize. The sincerity in his voice resonated deeply within me. For the first time during our conversation, I sensed the barrier between us starting to genuinely dissolve. In the weeks that followed, my life transformed in both expected and unexpected ways. The footage of the incident went viral, resulting in a surge of media requests that I mostly turned down. Solstice Protection Services did promote me, assigning me to lead a new division dedicated to event security and threat assessment training. My injury healed well, leaving just a small scar that I occasionally found myself touching during stressful times, a reminder of my capabilities when it mattered most. Professional recognition came in ways I hadn't foreseen. I was awarded the Civilian Bravery Award that the police captain had mentioned, presented at a ceremony attended by both my mother and, to my surprise, my father. Several security industry publications featured profiles on me, and I was invited to speak at conferences about threat identification and intervention strategies. However, more significant than the public recognition were the private transformations. My relationship with my father entered a new stage, initially tentative, but gradually becoming more authentic as he made efforts to understand my perspective. He inquired about my work, listened attentively to my responses, and even came to see a demonstration of the tactical response techniques my team had created. When a prominent financial magazine featured me in their 40 under 40 list of security professionals, he took the time to frame the article and showcase it proudly in his office next to his own accolades. 6 months post-wedding, he came over to my apartment for dinner, which was a first for him. As we sat at my small kitchen table, he surveyed the humble surroundings with fresh eyes. "You know," he remarked, "I always associated success with a particular lifestyle. A big house, a fancy car, an exclusive address." "I understand," I replied, serving the pasta I had prepared. "That's why my choices puzzled you so much." He nodded in agreement. "But looking at your life now, I perceive a different kind of success. You possess purpose, earn respect from your colleagues, and engage in work that truly impacts the world." He paused, then added, "You have integrity. That holds more value than any corner office." I smiled, appreciating the weight of those words from someone who had spent years pursuing corner offices and country club memberships. "Does this mean you'll stop sending me law school program listings?" I joked. He laughed, a genuine sound I had not heard often enough. "I think I can confidently say your current career path is going quite well." My healing journey went beyond my relationship with my father. The incident compelled me to face how I had internalized his dismissive attitude, sometimes questioning my own decisions despite external success. Through therapy and deep introspection, I started to fully embrace my journey. Not as a reaction to his disapproval, but as a conscious choice that resonated with my values and strengths. I discovered that true security does not stem from others' validation, but from living authentically. The acknowledgement my father eventually offered was appreciated, but I no longer required it to feel whole. A year after the wedding incident, I received an unexpected call from Marcus. She and my father were organizing a charity gala to support first responders, and they asked me to speak about the significance of security training and emergency preparedness. "Your father is incredibly proud of you," she remarked, her tone warmer than I had ever heard before. "He shares your accomplishments with everyone now. It's genuinely quite touching." At the gala, as I stood at the podium gazing out at a crowd filled with people, including my father, I contemplated how profoundly life can transform when we remain authentic to ourselves, even when those nearest to us fail to recognize our worth. Security encompasses more than just protection, I conveyed to the audience. It involves fostering environments where individuals can flourish without fear. Sometimes this entails physical safety, but often it delves into something more profound, a feeling of being appreciated for who you truly are. I locked eyes with my father as I articulated those sentiments, and the mutual understanding that flowed between us was more valuable than any accolade or headline. Life is seldom as intense as those moments at my father's wedding. Yet, the insights from that day continue to steer me. I discovered that at times, we must rescue ourselves before we can assist others. That acknowledgement frequently arises from unforeseen sources, and it's never too late to mend what has been fractured. I remain in the security field, still placing myself between peril and those in need of protection. However, I now do so with the full awareness that my journey is legitimate, significant, and entirely my own. Have you ever experienced a moment when someone finally recognized your true worth after overlooking you for years? Or have you gone through a significant event that transformed a challenging relationship in your life? Please share your story in the comments below. And if you found value in my journey, kindly like this video, subscribe for more tales of personal victory, and share it with someone who may need a reminder that their path is valid, even when others fail to see it.